AITA for refusing to forgive my wife after she told everyone I abandoned my family, when in reality, I found out about her year-long affair with my brother. 38M. Never thought I'd be sitting here typing this, but the last year has been a slow collapse that finally snapped in the worst possible way. I was married to my wife, Lauren, 36F, for 12 years. We had 2 kids, a mortgage we were paying down, the usual life that's more routine than romance. My brother Jason, 34M, is the kind of guy people like. Funny, useful, always volunteering to help move furniture. He was family and, until recently, someone I trusted without hesitation. About a year and a half ago, I started noticing small things. Little absences, explanations that felt half true. Lauren started guarding her phone a bit more, turning the screen face down when we were in the same room, stepping into the bathroom to take calls. That could have been nothing. We're busy parents. Maybe she needed space. But then there were more specific cues. Jason suddenly had time to pop over at odd hours. He'd volunteer to pick up the kids from school on the days I worked late. And sometimes he'd always be the one who happened to be in the neighborhood. Those coincidences stacked. The first thing that made me go from uneasy to suspicious was small and stupid. I left work early one afternoon and drove past our house. Jason's truck was parked out front, and Lauren was in the driveway, waving like nothing was unusual. I parked, walked up, and they both looked flustered like 2 kids caught skipping class. She told me he'd come by to help install a shelf. Fine, maybe that was it. But the feeling in my chest didn't go away. I don't like snooping. I'm not proud of how I handled the next day, but I couldn't ignore the nagging. That night, after the kids were asleep, I looked at her phone. What I saw stopped me in a way nothing ever has. Months of messages between her and Jason. Not just, hey, how are you? Stuff. Flirty things, inside jokes turned sexual, snapshots of plans that excluded me and the kids. There were lines about how boring our marriage had become, and some messages that were explicit about meeting late, being careful, and how easy it was to hide things at our house because no one suspects. I printed a few pages. I didn't screenshot and leak anything. I kept it private. The next morning, I asked for a conversation. I walked into the kitchen with that paper and put it on the table. I said very simply, "Is this true?" She stared, then tried the usual. Denial, minimize, you don't understand. When I pushed, she stopped lying. She admitted it had been physical for months. She begged me not to tell anyone, begged for a chance to fix it, to go to counseling for the kids, for us. I left that night. I packed a bag and went to a friend's couch. I wanted air and distance to think without being manipulated by apologies that sounded curated to keep me quiet. Instead of the private reckoning I expected, things went sideways socially. Lauren started telling a very different story. She told her parents, friends, and some family that I had abandoned her and the kids out of nowhere. She framed herself as the victim of my sudden, inexplicable cruelty. People who wanted a simple narrative. Man leaves, woman suffers, found it tidy and sad, and they ran with it. Messages came in from people I trusted, saying things like, "Are you sure you're okay? You should come home and talk," and "Maybe not the best time to leave the kids." My parents were confused and hurt when they heard Lauren's version before mine. I tried to tell them the truth, calmly, privately. I said the words, showed the few prints I'd brought with me to someone I trusted, asked for a private conversation before judgments were made. A couple of people believed me, but a lot of the initial chorus of sympathy stayed with her because she'd been first and her version was tidy. It's an ugly human thing. People often take the first story they hear. I felt boxed in. I'd walked out because I couldn't live with the betrayal, and she'd started using that choice to cast me as the villain. I don't blame people for being confused. The whole thing felt surreal, but I also refused to be responsible for covering up or letting a lie become the community's memory. So I did what felt like the only honest option in a room of rumors. I collected the proof I had and decided to make it visible to the people who mattered most. I printed more messages, careful, factual, with dates, and I brought them to extended family dinner when both sides of our family were there. It was not dramatic. I slid the pages across the table when Lauren started her rehearsed story about abandonment. The room went quiet. My parents read. My brother, who had no idea he'd be the subject, went pale. Lauren begged me not to, called me cruel, said I'd humiliate the kids. But the pages did what evidence does. They forced a pause. For the first time, people saw the timeline. My story was no longer a wild claim. It had threads, dates, and messages. The shift was immediate and complicated. My mother started crying and then apologizing for doubting me. My father, who doesn't do much emotion, looked like a man whose inside had gone cold. Jason walked out. Lauren tried to scream that I'd shown private messages and that I had no right, but the flood of her own words did the work for me. After that night, gossip lost its primitive power. Update 3 weeks later. The short of the last 3 weeks is messy but clarifying. After the confrontation, Lauren moved out to her parents' place with the kids on a temporary basis. Jason has mostly disappeared from family events. People avoided looking at him. My parents eventually apologized for their first reaction. My dad said he'd been aghast and ashamed that he hadn't asked to see the facts before taking a side. That mattered more than I expected. I didn't get the warm reconciliation some people wanted. I got the truth, and truth has a sharper edge than sympathy. Lauren has been relentless in trying to win me back in private messages that alternate between tears and anger. She's sent long, circular apologies. I was lonely. I made a mistake. We can fix this. I read some and ignored others. She even showed up at my friend's house, begging in a way that felt performative. My friend asked her to leave. Meanwhile, Jason's girlfriend, yes, he had one during a chunk of this, reached out to me after the truth surfaced. She told me she was grateful I exposed him because she'd suspected something and was living a lie too. That was a strange, small mercy. I also started talking to a lawyer, not because I wanted a scorched earth battle, but because I needed to know what steps to take to protect myself and the kids. We have shared accounts and stuff that needed to be sorted prudently. I moved funds, froze credit cards that were jointly held, and started to plan custody logistics so the kids' lives wouldn't be tossed around because of adult drama. Legal advice made me feel less like a pawn and more like someone taking careful actions. Emotionally, some days feel like waking from a bad dream, and other days feel raw as any fresh wound. I won't lie. There are moments where I replay the texts and want to rage in ways I won't hear. But most I'm focusing on routines for the kids, school, homework, bedtime, and trying to give them stability. My son asked me once if mommy would ever move back in. I told him, I don't know, buddy. Right now, we're fixing things. Kids don't need the whole story. They need solid meals and a parent who shows up. Final update. 2 months later, things have settled into a new normal. We're filing for divorce. It's not dramatic, no shouting legal fights yet, but it's the right step for me. I've got primary custody for now with a fair visitation plan for Lauren. That's what the lawyer and I crafted to minimize upheaval for the kids. I'm also surprised by how much of the heat in my social circle cooled once people had time to think rather than react. A few friends who've been silent reached out and apologized for not asking questions earlier. Some stopped speaking to us both. That's life sorting itself. Jason disappears and reappears like a bad conscience. He sent me one email that was part apology, part attempt to explain, but I stopped reading after the first paragraph. I don't need his voice in my life. Lauren made attempts to reconcile publicly by posting a long apology that read like it was written by someone who rehearsed vulnerability for the camera. Some people accepted it. Others saw it as image management. Most important is the kids. They're doing. They get to bed at a consistent time. They go to their activities, and my daughter drew a portrait of our little family that I put on the fridge. Small things that are the scaffolding of ordinary life keep me going. I've been to counseling twice a week, and it's helped me not just vent, but make practical decisions. What to say to the kids, what to tell family, how to handle holidays. Would I ever forgive Lauren in a way that lets her back into bed in life as before? Not now. A year of betrayal by the two people I loved most altered the mathematical likelihood of trust returning. People talk about mistakes as if everything is forgivable on demand. This wasn't a mistake you trip over and stumble past. It was a year of choices that were hidden and repeated. That's a different category. Do I hate her? No. I'm tired more than hateful. I don't relish her pain when consequences arrive. I don't cheer at her missteps. But I also won't be the person who quiets the evidence because it's socially messy. The kids deserve better than that. I chose their stability over being the partner who forgave at the expense of my own integrity. So, am I in the wrong here? I don't think so. I left because I couldn't live with the betrayal and then refused to be the shadow that concealed it. If that makes some people uncomfortable, fine. I'll live with the discomfort of standing by the truth rather than the comfort of pretending nothing happened. That's the end.